Welcome to the Hard Money Show, where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. It is a good day when we can get on the podcast, do a little solo episode where we can update you guys about what is going on in the market. I know it's been a while since we've done a market update. I think the last time that we did a market update, we were talking about the feds were going to be meeting, what we kind of thought the end of the year interest rates were going to look like, and things like that. And I know that the outlook was, I guess the best way to put it was a little bleak. I know people have been a little worried, a little confused. Obviously here in California and through the United States, we're right on the precipice of a significant recession. And I don't think it's officially been noted that by the government here, but things are going up here. Things are getting much more expensive. And, that along with what happened during the COVID era in real estate and how that kind of switched and we started to see interest rates go up have led us to be in a kind of interesting place. And I think people have been wondering what is going to happen and how are they going to be able to navigate the market. And on the other side, realtors have been wondering, how can they continue to provide service? How can they continue to engage in the market? How can they continue to do what's best for their clients in a market that's so demanding? So I want to jump into this a little bit, and I want to give a little disclaimer here that I know it sounds a little odd, but I do think that this, for the most part, stands true. The best time to buy is when you can afford to buy. And if you need to buy, if you can wait and you can afford to buy, then yeah, you have a little bit of opportunity there to, ride the wave of the market and things like that. But if you're in a position where you're kind of like, man, like I really would like to buy and I have the funds to do so, even though the market's extremely high right now. And I understand that there's a lot to talk about as far as it pertains to your ability to refinance into something that makes sense, and taking on this extremely high mortgage payment. But then there's also something to be said about what's happening in the rental market. I know that here in Sacramento, we've seen jumps as high as 30 to 40% over this year, 2022, in the rental market. So the question really comes in hand, if you have the ability to buy a house, and you're already going to have to pay 20 to 30% more than what you were going to be paying for rent, then does it make sense to buy a house, right? And this is where when people have conversations and they're like, well, I would, they kind of have their foot in the door in real estate in the way that they follow the news, they own a home, maybe they, are kind of friends with realtors and things like that. They think they kind of know what's going on, but they don't really, right? I mean, this is a really tough place to be in to really know what's going on. And luckily, because I'm on the loan side, because I'm on the real estate side, because I'm fully engaged in what we're doing, I have a pretty good understanding of what's happening in the market, where we think it's going to go. But I can say that I've even been surprised with myself with some of the shifts that we've had. And I don't think anybody can necessarily predict what's going to go on, but we do our very best to try and create a picture for you on how to navigate it. So when we're talking about, is this a good time for you to buy? What should you do? And things like that. Well, consider this. I know when I lived, especially, when I was living in Midtown, but I think this is through Sacramento is pretty consistent, especially if you're looking for like a house to live in and something like that. Because if you're considering to buy, you're probably maybe considering renting a house, right? And even if not that, then maybe you're living in some areas that have nicer rentals or things like that. And it's not unheard of to have rentals that are all the way up to almost $2,000. And so I know that when we lived in Midtown, we lived in a small 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment, and we loved it. It was centralized. It was great. But the only situation is that it's a little expensive, and it was actually cheaper than the place that we did live. and they wanted to actually raise the rent to, I think, $2,100 a month. So let's just say, for instance, that you know, at the beginning of this year, you were at $2,000 in rent. Well, can you really afford to spend another $600 if it goes up 30%? Now, I understand, and hopefully everybody understands this. There's only there's guidelines to, you know, how much rent can go up, and there's some caps on that, and it depends in the situation you're in. I do recognize that, but it's not uncommon for people to have rents that go up $600 or $200 or whatever. I mean, it's a lot of money. Even like a $50 jump to $100 jump for me, I always thought, man, like that's a with a lot I can do with that money. And so, you know, there's this idea that when you're renting, you're paying for somebody else's mortgage, right? And maybe it's not, you're not renting a house or something like that, and you're renting an apartment complex, but that money is going somewhere else that isn't going to you, right? And so there's this understanding for people. There's this understanding, and there's this concept that I think comes into people's minds when they're hearing what's going on in the market, when they see what's going on in the news, and they do it dollar for dollar, right? They go, oh, well, I'm going to have to pay, you know, let's just say it's the same amount, $2,600 in rent. I'm going to have to pay $2,600 in a mortgage. But the significant difference is that I'm going to have to put all this money down to get into this property, right? Well, it's not apples for apples, right? I mean, these are apples and oranges. Yeah, it's a place that you live. Yes, you can make it a home. Yes, I mean, you can kind of consider a mortgage and rent the same, but the significant difference is that when you buy a property, that you are the owner of that property, and that money that you put down for the down payment, that property is equity in your property. Now, you didn't just lose that money. You didn't give that money away. And then the money that you're paying every month, there's a portion of that is going to paying down the actual principal. And so it's like you have a piggy bank, right? And so it may feel like you put all this money into this property, and now you don't have that money, and now you're spending, and maybe your mortgage is more than what your rent would be, but you're not losing that money. When you rent, 100% of that money is gone. That's not the case when you own. And so this is where I think for a lot of realtors who don't articulate this well, and they say, well, it's always better to own than rent. And over the long haul, that is 100% true. And I am totally empathetic to how difficult it can be to get into a home. But I do urge those people that are right on the precipice of should I do it or should I not do it, even with the increase in rates, even with how high the property values are. If you're in a position to be able to do that, you need to look at it as you're buying a home, right? It's not, I get this is your largest asset that you're ever going to own, but if you need to get into a home, at least now you're saving money by putting the money into the principal, and you're not throwing away all of your money, right? So there is something about that. Now, there's a weird thing happening right now where property values are starting to drop and interest rates have stagnated a bit, but they were going up. And so there was this idea that a lot of realtors were saying, and keep in mind, don't ever take face value information about the financial side from a realtor. I'm not saying they're not competent. I'm not saying that they're mostly informed, but they're not the individuals that actually know what's going on this side. You need to talk to a loan officer. They're the ones that follow what's going on as far as it pertains to interest rates. And it's not straightforward interest rates. Every individual loan company has an opportunity to add a little bit or subtract a little bit on their end, or make it a little more difficult or a little less difficult to get loans with them. They can offer certain programs that other ones don't offer. And that's what I mean. It's not just straightforward like that. And so realtors, I mean, they kind of know what's going on because they're partnering people, but really the loan officers are the ones that know what's going on as far as it pertains to, how competitive are interest rates looking and things like that. Now, the realtors, they're seeing kind of a day in and day out what property values are looking like, right? So they're a great resource for that. And so, this is where there's kind of this really difficult decision to make, because there's a lot of people putting out information with they're like, oh, just buy now, because then you can refinance later. That's not always the case, especially if you're upside down on your house. And what I mean by that is if you bought your property, and let's say you put, I'm going to just try to be as easy as possible. Let's just say you put 10% down on this property, and you bought this property. Let's say it's 500,000, and then this property drops 30% in value over this last 6 months. Well, that the amount that you put into that property and the amount that it's dropped there, that's a significant gap there. And you need to have equity in a property, for the most part, to be able to leverage a refinance, right? And so there's something to be said, and I think some people do a good job articulating this to people, but you need to be very cognizant about and working with a good realtor and a good loan officer that build into your purchasing the decline that's happening in our market for the most part, right? Like try to build in that 10% decline or whatever it is. And so, we can't ever give you a straightforward answer. Is this the best time to buy? Is this not the best time to buy? It really depends on your situation. I know people hate to hear that because they want a yes or no answer, but it's never a yes or no answer because nobody has the same situations, right? You have different incomes, you have different debts that you've carried, you have different credit scores that you have, and you have different, eligibilities. Someone might be able to get a VA loan, somebody might need an FHA loan or conventional loan, and all of these things make a significant difference on what your home payment is going to look like. But ultimately, I say that we're looking at a really interesting market right now because the Feds met and the reports came out about employment, and the employment rates came out, and on top of that, the inflation rates, and they softened a bit, right? And so because of that, I think we saw a positive outlook, and we saw a drop in the actual rates for mortgages, which was great for people that were trying to get in the market. Now, people are still kind of upset. They're like, yeah, it went down, but it's still, 6.2%, 6.3%. Guys, I'm sorry. Like if you missed the boat, that 2-3, that's like maybe a once in a lifetime thing that happens. It's not a common practice. 3, 5, 6%, like 4, 5, 6%. That's like commonplace rates, right? So we need to get rid of that. We need to understand that, we may never ever see that again. We may, who knows, but probably not. And so we need to start getting comfortable with where these numbers are at and find a way to get on the housing market. And ultimately, I really do believe that is the most important thing for building your wealth for your family over the long term. Now, there's a lot of difficulties that comes with owning a home. I can tell you that myself because I have a couple of projects that I need to be working on, and that money comes straight out of your pocket. But ultimately, you're building an asset that you're going to be able to hopefully leverage someday. And really, you have a home that you can live in. And, if you get a fixed rate mortgage, you don't need to worry about that rate ever going up. It's going to be the same for you no matter what happens with inflation. You're going to be fine. Now, property taxes, if your property gains value, well, that's another thing. But we're in an interesting spot right now because the Feds are going to meet again really soon, and I'm interested to see what they do because I honestly thought, and I think a lot of people thought, rates were going to go up to 8, 9, maybe even 10%. But they didn't, right? It looks like they might stagnate. It looks like they might even go down a little bit. And so you definitely want to keep in contact with your loan officer and maybe even your realtor if they're kind of following what's going on that side, and see what happens with that and start to prepare for this next coming year of 2023. I have people reaching out to me right now and they're saying, hey, I think that I'm going to want to buy in the first half of the year. And I want to start getting prepared for that. And I'm like, that's great. Let's figure this out. Let's see what's going to happen with these rates and where we can get you and what programs are going to make the most sense. So, Yeah, the market's interesting, but it's just, there's a lot of factors kind of going into this. And it's funny because I was just having a conversation with another realtor who's really good at what they do, but I'm still trying to decide what makes a great realtor. I don't know for sure. But I will say that I really believe that the world economy plays a significant impact in what happens in the United States, especially California, which is one of the largest economies in the world. And so when I'm looking at the mortgage bubble that's in China, I'm looking at the mortgage bubble that is in the UK and the huge drop that they've had in their economy. I'm looking at the same issues that are happening in Canada and similar things that are happening here in America. And I'm thinking, well, all of these play together. All of these are significant. What's happening there? What's happening here? Is there any foreshadowing that we're going to see? I worry that that's not something that all people are doing and are all realtors and loan officers. And who knows, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm going to have to wait and see. Maybe in a year, I'll say, well, it didn't matter. I was just new information that was irrelevant and it's interesting to know. Or I might be winning the market, right? And we might be making significant strides over here with our clients because we pay more attention. And so I can say we could be in a worse situation because there's other parts of the world that are. But I think right now we're doing okay. If you're looking to buy and you're looking to get into a property, I think that this could be a good time for some people, especially as the home prices start to drop. It's starting to get a little bit easier. And the one thing that people are kind of forgetting, and I hear this all the time, they're like, especially when rates got up to 7, like, oh, I would never buy right now. I would never buy right now. 7, it's 7. And I kept thinking, well, if your realtor is getting you into a property right now at 7%, they're doing a bad job. That's the honest truth. But a lot of people don't understand what that means, and they don't understand that there's ways to get that rate down, right? And that's not just with the mortgage programs. There's ways for your realtor to be competitive for you and to have success. And so what I mean by this is credits, right? And so I've been seeing this pretty significantly with realtors that are doing a good job, and they're understanding that with a little bit of patience and with the right property and the right people, that you can ask for these credits and that these credits can be applied to buying your rate down. So you're not getting a rate at 6.5, you're getting a rate at 5.5, right? And I think that's extremely significant, and people need to understand that it's not just what the rate is currently at. It's what can we negotiate on the front end and on the back end to get you into something that makes sense. And so you really need to stop trying to figure this out on your own, unless you are extremely competent in what's going on in this market and you have access like we do to the information that we do. You need to be talking to your realtor. You need to be preparing with your loan officer, and you need to understand that it's not straightforward. There's a lot that can be done. And there's a lot of programs that are being offered right now to help, certain individuals get into certain areas and things like that. I don't want to get too in the weeds with that information. And that's something where, if you're a kind of a lower income buyer, you're looking for something, let me know. But I don't think there's maybe ever a right or wrong time, but there's obviously better times to, make this investment in your life. And so we want to make sure at least you're going to be prepared for what you need moving forward. So as we come to the end of this year and you start to think about preparing for this purchase, give some consideration to what I said. Definitely do a little bit of research for yourself, but ultimately send that email. I know the holidays are coming up and it feels like, I shouldn't do anything after the holidays, but I'm telling you, with the way the market is right now, with the right realtor and the right loan officer, they will be thrilled to have work at this time during the holidays, because the market is slow and they don't have a lot going on and they want to have some prospects going into next year. So, the same thing for you. Don't just be like, well, I'll do it after the holidays. Start to prepare now, because the people that are preparing now are going to be the people that find success. So give us some consideration. As always, thank you guys for being on. This is the Hard Money Show, where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. You guys have a great one, and talk to you soon.